Hello, my name is Cliff Myers. I'm the safety manager with the federal government. I'm here today to talk about exit routes, emergency action plans, fire prevention plans, and fire protection. Essentially, the majority parts of the NFPA 101, the Life Safety Code. Life Safety Code was promulgated essentially because fire and explosions kill more than 200 employees and injure about 5,000 workers every year. There is a long and tragic history of workplace fires in this country, essentially caused by problems with fire exits and fire extinguishing systems. OSHA investigators, when they do audits of facilities, they will find that employees or employers generally will have exits blocked for different reasons, or that they will have problems with the fire extinguisher or the fire extinguishing systems. And OSHA requires that these employers provide the proper exits and firefighting equipment, and also for training employees to prevent fire deaths in the workplace, either through the use of emergency action plans or like simple things like drilling to know where to go in the event of evacuation of a building. And a lot of people believe or think that the actual evacuations of a building are for fire, but as we found recently, there are other issues as well, including workplace violence and threats of terrorism. So it's really important that companies and employees understand the NFPA 101 and the caveats that it has. Essentially, the NFPA uses their standard to break down exits from a building into three components. Essentially, these components are the exit route, and they're a continuous, unobstructed path of travel from a point within a workplace to a place of safety. And that can include a refuge area on a multiple floored building, where the refuge area would be somewhere near the stairwell, generally at the top, that is marked a refuge area, and also has a telephone that can be reached by somebody who could happen to be in a wheelchair. Fire departments understand these refuge areas exist in large buildings, and they will send people up the stairwells first to rescue these people. And the exit route consists of three parts. The exit access is the point from where you're at in a building to the door, and then they also discuss the second part of the exit route, which is the actual door itself and the components that make up the door and the exit discharge. So I'm going to take the next few minutes and talk about these three components of the exit route and how they are important to employers and employees in the event of an emergency. And a little bit later on, I'm going to talk about a couple instances in American history to where there were multiple fatalities due to fire. One is, in particular, the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire Factory fire that happened a little over 100 years ago now, and in 1911. That killed 146 people. Essentially, they died because they couldn't get out of the building. So that was the beginning of not only the American Society of Safety Engineers, but the NFPA 101 as well. So the exit routes, their basic requirements have to do exit routes. They have to be permanent. They must be enough exits in a proper arrangement for quick escape. They have to be separated by fire-resistant materials. And people don't realize that even mundane things like the drywall in your homes, the drywall on your business, they're actually fire rated, in some cases up to 2 hours. So they are fire rated materials as well. And the openings into the exit must be limited to those necessary to allow access to the exit or the exit discharge. So the openings have to be available at all times for employees to be able to use them. And the opening should be protected by an approved self-closing fire door that remains closed or automatically closes in an emergency. And a lot of people don't realize that they will automatically close. A lot of them have a small actuator at the top of the door, and it's a magnetic actuator that when the fire alarm system goes off, or when there is a release of either water through the sprinkler system or another type of material like halon, that these doors will automatically, the magnet will disengage and the doors will automatically close. And another place you will see those are in hotels, where you'll see two doors, one on each side of an elevator. And a lot of people wonder why those doors are there. But when the alarm goes off, those doors will automatically disengage, and they will close in front of the elevator, because everybody knows that the worst place to be in a fire is in the elevator, and that way people will migrate to the stairs and go down that way. So that's the basic requirements of the exit route. Now, the exit discharge is from when you get to the door. You have your exit route and your exit, which is part of it, which is the fire-rated door. And then you got the discharge. It's where will your employees, where will the customers, where will the people who are in the building, where will they go after the alarm goes off? And the NFPA standard, the 101, indicates that people must lead directly outside to a street, walkway, refuge area, essentially a public way or open space that is large enough to hold the entire occupants of the building. And a lot of companies don't realize that, and they'll build a building to code, and then after the building is built, they'll start doing things like adding gates, adding fencing to the back, which would actually restrict the amount of people who could be in that area during emergency evacuation. So it's always a good idea to take a look at these gates and look at these fences after the building is built, or if they've retrofitted a building, because people have gone out to the back, let's say the back door, and been stuck and not be able to reach the street. So that's really important. And if there happen to be exit stairs, you cannot have a stairwell where you step out of the door to the stairs that you have a step down. And it sounds kind of funny, like why would that matter? But there are instances in the past where people have opened up the exit door and the platform has been one level below, and they have stepped down and fallen, and then when people are rushing out behind them, then you start the domino effect, and one by one people will start to fall. So there's a long history also behind NFPA 101 of instances that have happened in the past. So if you're leading from a building to a stairwell, the stairwell must be on the same level, the same as the door itself. So the platform should be the same level, and then you lead to either side discharge or front discharge out of the doors, and out the stairs and through the doors. So that's essentially the safest way to exit a building if you have stairs. Now, there are times that OSHA compliance officers has visited buildings, visited facilities, and found that the exit doors were unlocked, which is absolutely amazing. And the standards are very specific that they have to be able to be open from the inside at all time. You can't have any special keys, tools, or any knowledge at all. You should be able to hit the panic bar, go out the door. Or if you notice in hotel rooms, especially since the MGM Grand Fire a few years ago in Las Vegas, that now there's a single throw that will exit the door. Even though when you go in a hotel room, you will click a couple throw knobs to lock the door. It's a single action to go out, and that is important because they don't want people to have to do 2 or 3 things at the same time to leave in the event of an emergency. Panic bars are acceptable as well, but they only the type that can be if they're locked from the outside. That's the only time that's permitted. They have to be able to be used instantaneously to leave, and a lot of companies and businesses will put an alarm on these panic bars, and that's acceptable as well, but the alarm cannot restrict the emergency use if the device or the alarm fails. So if the alarm is broken, you still should be able to get out. The exit door itself is a particular interest to OSHA, and again, it's the mundane things that people don't think about. But the side hinge exit door, it must open outward in the direction of travel, and it can be used to connect any room to the exit route. And the reason it needs to swing outward, again, is people don't think that that's an important issue. But if you're let's say if you're in a conference room, there are 100, 150, 200 people in there, and an alarm goes off, and one of the doors, for one reason or another, you cannot exit through, everybody's going to head to that door. And if the door swings inward, people in the past have backed up behind the door. And in a panic situation, the first person who hits the door will try to pull it backward, try to pull it open, but you won't be able to do that. And because people will back up, will pile up behind. So again, there are instances in the past that has occurred. So the NFPA and OSHA require that the doors swing outward, and that way, when you're leaving, it'll swing outward in the direction of travel, and then people will be able to evacuate the building where they're at. Another thing is the exit route capacity. Most architects, when they design a building, they will take in the capacity load and the exits in part of that design, and Uniform Building Code covers that. But there are certain things that happen when people move into a facility or into a business, and they will see those long, big, wide aisles, those big, wide hallways, and they'll assume those are great places to store equipment or to store boxes or things. Can't do that. That's not allowed either, because that does, at that point, it will decrease the amount of exit for the people and the capacity to be able to leave the building, and so that is definitely against the NFPA 101. And all exit access must be at least 28 inches. So 28 inches is less than 36 inches that people think about with the ADA, but the NFPA 101 indicates 28 inches. But for good measure, for ADA access, American Disabilities Act access, 36 inches is the best way to go. And in most modern buildings, you will see that. People rarely will go to 28 inches, because if you only have 28-inch aisles for egress, and you happen to have an employee that comes in to work for you who's in a wheelchair, you must provide reasonable accommodations at that point, which can be expensive if you don't have a place for them to work. So most companies, again, will default and go with the 36 inches. It's just the right thing to do. Exit routes, they have to be kept free and unobstructed. They can't be obstructed by things. You can't, like I say, put boxes in there, because that's a quick an OSHA violation. All the compliance officer needs to do is come in and take a picture, and boom, they've got you. So you need to make sure that your aisles are kept open as they were designed by the architects. You can't have anything explosive, no highly flammable materials anywhere in the exit route from where you are in the building to where you go outside. And so companies need to be aware that, especially if you're in an industry that you do have explosive materials, combustible flammables, that your exit routes do not lead through those areas, because obviously it would not be a good idea to have people go through an area that could potentially be on fire or that could have flammable materials in it. And your emergency safeguards, your sprinkler system, fire alarms, doors, and exit lighting always must be in proper working condition. The sprinkler systems need to be checked at least annually. Your alarm systems the same way. Fire doors should be checked more frequently. Monthly is good. And your exit lighting needs to be checked monthly as well. And that's just a simple test, a 15-minute test on your emergency lighting system to ensure that it will work at all times. Because all of this has to be in order 24/7, 365. It has to be immediately available for immediate exit. Now again, we're going to talk about the doors. Every exit must be visibly marked. It must have an exit sign, and it has to say the word exit. It can't have any other terminology, any other verbiage. It must say exit. And each exit door also must be free of decorations or something that could obscure the visibility. In a lot of companies, especially office environments, people at Christmas time, I've seen them wrap doors like Christmas presents, which really looks neat. It's really cool. But again, the safety guys got to go around and tell them you can't do that. And the reason that people don't want to do that is you don't want to put a combustible material on your exit door. In the event of a fire, the last thing you want is for your exit door to be on fire. So we ask people not to do that, and we ask them they can always decorate something else. So you want to keep an exit door just saying that it's an exit door, and even if it's alarmed, then the alarm, it'll have the little signage that says that it's alarmed as well. And the direction of travel is really important. Any facility you're in, any office you're in, if you step out of your office or you step out of your cubicle, you should be able to see an exit sign somewhere. And that's apparent, because if there is a fire, you need to be able to look at the exit, either look left, look right, look forward, and you will see the exit sign with an arrow that will post the directions to the exit. And that is absolutely a part of the NFPA 101. It has to be immediately apparent. It shouldn't take any special knowledge to know what the signage is and what the signage says. And the line of sight must be visible at all times, 24/7. The exit cannot be blocked. It cannot be moved. You have to make sure your exit sign is there. And I've seen a number of companies that I've done inspections on. They will go and have a painter come in. This happens more than once. The painter will come in and they'll do painting, and then they won't put the exit signs back. And then that's an OSHA violation, and you know, so companies need to be aware that they have to be there at all times. And all this I'm talking about, your employees have to be trained at least annually on this as well. Initially, within 30 days is a good rule of thumb when they come into a facility, into a plant, and then a yearly evacuation drill, or even twice a year is in order to just ensure that your employees know where to go. And it's also a good thing to have a meeting area outside of your building for employees where they know they can go and wait for the supervisor to come out and take roll. A lot of people don't think, oh, that's really important for me to take roll, but there's a history of firefighters that have gone back into buildings because somebody couldn't find somebody and they thought they were in there. And firefighters have perished because of that. We had an instance in Phoenix about 10 years ago. A firefighter named Brett Harbour went into a building. He and his partner went into a building. It was an old grocery store that was on fire, and they were told that everybody thought somebody was in there because they didn't find him outside. They couldn't find him. That store did not have a meeting place for their employees. Brett Tarver went in with his partner, became disoriented because of the smoke, ran out of oxygen, and he passed away because of that. So it's really important that employers drill their employees know where to go, and that they will be able to know exactly what to do in the event of evacuation. Exit marking is really important as well. Every doorway or passageway on the access that could be mistaken for an exit door, but it's truly not an exit door, must have a sign that says not an exit. Must be in that verbiage as well. A lot of times this happens where in buildings where you have a closet or something like that, that if you have 2 or 3 doors on the same wall, one needs to be marked exit, and the other 2, if they could be misconstrued as an exit, should have not an exit on it. Again, it seems kind of mundane, but in the past, people have gone into these closets and become confused and not known where to go. And finally, the last component is emergency action plan. And that's the plan that every employer is obligated to have, sometimes through local jurisdictions, definitely through OSHA, definitely part of the NFPA 101, that tells about the actions that must be taken to ensure that employees are safe in emergency. This includes the floor maps or plans that you will see on walls everywhere, and it shows the emergency escape routes where people need to go. And also it tells employees what actions to take. Some companies will actually break them up into quadrants of zones, and they'll have a fire group that'll go through and sweep these zones before, and they're generally the last people to leave the building before there's an exit. And that's always a good idea. And the EAP will cover everything that's reasonably expected: fires, explosions, toxic chemicals, releases, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. So pretty much anything that could happen where your facility is located needs to be taken as part of the emergency action plan. And the last thing I'm going to talk about are, in the case history, there are a couple instances in the past where there have been multiple fatalities because of a lack of concern for egress and the NFPA 101. And I mentioned earlier the Triangle Shirtwaist factory fire that happened in 1911 in New York City, and 146 people died because of that. They were trapped on multiple floors in an older building, and they couldn't get out. And so that was the genesis for the National NFPA, and also for the American Society of Safety Engineers came into being. But now we'll fast forward nearly 100 years later, and to West Warwick, Rhode Island, where they had a fire in a club called the Station Nightclub, and it was just a rock and roll concert, and the band decided they were going to use pyrotechnics as part of the show, even though part of their contract said they weren't supposed to. They went ahead and lit it off. And what happened was that the pyrotechnics, they caught the foam insulation on both sides of the stage on fire, and the fire moved across the top of the ceiling, and 100 people died. And so this is 100 years later after the NFPA, and things are still going on like that. And what happened with the Station Nightclub was it was a building that had a different occupancy when it was built. It was not built as a nightclub, but as what happens a lot now, they retrofit buildings, and buildings are used for not as they were designed. And this particular building was a restaurant, and they had been a restaurant in the past, went out of business. This company took it over, and they turned it into a nightclub. So it wasn't designed as a nightclub. What happened was they only had one main exit, which was a double door exit coming in the front of the building. But about 15 feet into the building, they had knocked that down to one door. So your 72-inch entrance became a 36-inch door, and then after that they had a little jog to the right, which even knocked it down even more. One of the exits, there were three exits out of the building. One of the exits was immediately compromised because that's where the fire was. Another exit out of the building was far back around the main bar into the kitchen that people didn't know about. There was a lack of signage in there. There was a lack of any type of emergency lighting, and as is human nature, when there's an issue like that, people have a tendency to go out where they came in. So everybody who was in that building, and alcohol also played a part in it as well. When the fire occurred, they didn't evacuate as quickly as they could, and people went out where they came in, and so everything was funneled down to that 36-inch doorway, and people started to stack up. And as part of the investigation, almost 50 people were found actually piled like cordwood at the entrance to the place. They tried to pull them out, they couldn't. The fire consumed the building rapidly, and they just were not able to get people out. And so it's amazing that after all these years and all the work that's gone into by OSHA, by the NFPA, by the American Society of Safety Engineers, that these things still occur today. An interesting thing to the station fire is the local fire marshal, from what I've read, actually inspected the building about a month and a half before the fire, and gave it a clean bill of health. So it's just amazing that even 100 years later we still have these issues. So just want everybody to think about when you're in a building, in a facility, in a hotel, in any type of nightclub, take a quick look where the exits are, know where you're going in event of emergency. If the alarm goes off, leave. The tendency for people not to leave, like in hotels or things like that, it's a good idea to go ahead and head out and just wait and see if there's an all clear. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you for your time.